Okay, coming into body reaction lines. What is anticipation? Not knowing what's going to happen. It's a process that we all have to understand through calculations. At point lines, it's everything in track locations. So being aware of everything that is happening to you, this is the process that we all have to understand. Because in positions to your setting, it's really identifying your line connections. To know exactly you have a calculation to a brain, to know location lines to its heart, identifications to its soul through line connection to your body. So the A track position your body lines, the fragmentation of sprint interference is going to higher level settings, taking you guys out of line communications to your EMS. Now the EMS is the electronic magnetic lines of the solar panels. Those solar panels are going to be released. Your cell modification spring lines are set up new position location dividers. This is going to set lines of separation, put you guys into online communications out of old patterns and line center locations, taking you out of old line centers and try to position a data process line screens in a prefix that puts position of pre-cortex. Their cerebral cortex line division line screens highest interference has geometric line communication of a pattern that allocates position calculations to your binaries and line calculations setting their travel communication point centers. Interference position is program. The core line center locations, all of the species line is coming in active line conditions are non-binary. So they're coming in binary retracts, but to get them in position of the cerebral cortex line design, the specifications and setting is the spectrum, how they go through core settings attractions. So in that direct locations, they're becoming into new EMF locations, energy magnetic fields. Now this puts a magnetic line interference electrons, sets position to its modification screen settings and travels. Point lines the highest interference of its image. This process their calculation setting to their mind into higher level communications, how to use their set location to its prefix and position lines to its cortex line design. This puts allocate positions of time centers into a mystical cortex location. Now, getting into the mystical cortex is understanding the cerebral and a line calculation setting. It's like a river stream going down a path and position knows exactly where the current is going. The current goes in a certain direction in position to get where it needs to go. So the process at all levels opens up its dimensional line screens. The dimensional doors is space like in your settings. Modification setting location of track lines. So end position your moon is back to zero. The zero correlation setting to its position lines of center interference and track location is coming in simulation. The simulation of your moons is into position lines in line calculations in your pixelation graphs. Now the central line communication setting, the moon itself has to come in its own creation center that modifies its signals to the location of its delta heading, was exactly where it's going in track locations to get to its specification centers. Now the spectrums and the specification screen settings and travel in positions operation is a solar sail. Okay, it's all lines its communication system. Your moons are back to zero. Your hair lines, the cortex lines, and stream interference. Now you come into mystical cortex vibration, which is extremely powerful to the mind. Now the mind lines a set location into the hardware, screens calculation Senate line into software, puts position location simulation, core tracks line Senate high positions. So the geometric lines, screen lines, is going to go circulation rotation. Now the circulatory lines, it's like a factory core. A factory core is a direct line connection to your defaults, setting track lines, set position species lines in a 12 D4 position lines high calculation set in the location setting and conformity. Now the high calculation setting to the comfortability in screen lines in position travel lines sets lines of fortation. Now this allocates positions of fortitude, set lines of high center into formation, lights of communication that travels, directs modification centers, putting default channels in a 12 foundation graph lines in your DNA track locations. This puts the lines of all calculation to its prefix and position your precortex. So in direct lines of position of travel line, the team come into lines of artery and location of centers. This puts them into lines of all communication center into body capacitors. They have to start identifying their system to a new earth line position. Okay, these set lines of high calculations to its lacing lines. Taking all lines of communication of snowy graph interference, taking all communication of floaters, direct lines, modifications, setting lines, I receptors, line divisions. Team is going to go through the center core line settings into molecules of letters. Now this gets you in positions to your mystical cortex line division. The dimension line centers is all about understanding your dimension lines of space and time. Okay, it's your position to understand you through more lines of communication of its awareness. Okay, and track locations, but you have to start identifying yourself more through body capacitor. Sets lines of communication to its ecosystem. Okay, setting line communication to its system lines, communication lines, and IO calculation line interference into its operation surface. Energy line, bracket communication lines, high center interference, equal lines, scores, send and track lines. 4 lines of high center location. 3 position lines of 8 lines calculations in position of box into calls. Sets lines communication lines centers into X, Y, Z. Sets position travel lines, bracket communication lines, 3-line communication setting, XX. Position line travel lines, center locations into YX. Sets communication screen line, center location into CX. Sets locations in FX, and set location line centers into TX. Sets information lines and correlation setting and tracks the position to its operation. All right. So in that line calculation setting, all X line centers come into 1 and 2 and 3 lines of 4, 4 lines of 6, and 4 lines of 8 in track location. Now it changes lines of E line. E line sets lines calculations in 1 tractions, sets lines of E line rotations in an east line, into west line, into center line communication, and a north line calculation stream location is setting position to its operation. Setting position line centers, all lines as high center interference. Brain interface course centered track lines, high positions calculations. Separate the position of travel lines in the calculation setting to shape a cortex line design. Leasing line communication stream lines and high calculation stream interference and travel to recognition. Okay. So it's amazing when you go in a core location, astral projection line screens, and set positions calculations. Okay. So there's a lot of calculation line centers, side line positions. So we take the 2X line centers, add position of 3 calculation lines setting and position locations. So that's 10, 10, and position of 10. 3 correlation settings of 10 triangulation line calculation line settings. 3 graph calculations. So we take 1, 2, and 3 track lines. 3 track line provision lines center locations, and we take 1, 2, and 3. Sets lines of communication to 3 line zeros and track locations and settings. 1, 2, 3 in track location. Okay, so it's really interesting how you go into 3 line centers into 3 zero location settings of binary cortex line design in position location operations, set location 1, 2, and 3, sets position of Earth habitation 1, 2, and 3, tracks communication lines, prefix, sets location line centers and high calculation system into precortex, sets communication line centers, high position of settings, image, and position locations into 0, 1 of invocation. That my equation. All right. So it's incredible once you understand how this all comes together. Informations of you interaction. See you, that's you in the center, right? Electrical line communication centers, high positions, travel lines, all lines of communication lines, electrical fields, line position location centers, and traction. You in the center communications, all 3 process. Okay. All right, that's done. All right, so in that line center high interference, we come into mystical cortex line design. The center lines is communication line screen settings and adaptation surface. All right, so we'll go into line communications to allows EM. Sets position locations EMF and position locations EMS. Sets locations EMC. All right, energy magnetic form, energy magnetic line, position locations, calculation settings, and travels. Puts all levels as systematic line screen high center interference, EMC, energy lines, magnetic lines into compute system, calculates high interference. Metric meters, energy line screen line centers, energy line rotation, center and position of energy line communications, 4 tracks, 5 track division, and set locations. Now that puts position lines of solar sails and track line condition setting in positions calculation. Okay. Now, directed modification line screens has position lines astral projections. Okay. Center line, streamlines and line center in a 3-line wave line screen set location. Dimension line scales, balanced position lines, high calculation settings into wave center line communication of programs. Now in track location line and center interference comes in position to its location system and travel. Point lines of division, lacing lines communication and graph calculation of point lines of center. Okay. Sets communication lines of box lines, point lines of track, Very complicated stuff, guys. So we got 4-line communications and graph calculation stream interference. Sets lines of high position locations into theta communications in one center, 2 tracks, and 3-line provision in set locations. Okay. Now this modifies the center line coordinate setting track lines. This is line communication setting to its EMF set locations. See? It traveled so fast, it disappeared. Okay, EMF. All right. So it sets lines communication to EMS and set location line screens, solar line communication panels. Now the upline centers high interference orbs its channel in communication orbing, sets lines and probing, and set position travel calculation at point centers. 2 panels align center location of north, east, west, and south, and stargates line screen and set positions calculations. Of all levels of communication travels in line settings, sets lines and new frames, new course set lines of calculation to its set line centers into mystical cortex of set location of design. Okay, travel position, travel calculation, point centers. Directing modification screen lines and high center interference, taking all communication lines at EMS, outline centers, solar direct signals, and set location in your settings. Line condition of pre-cortex lines of cerebral. Direct lines modification in line side location of EMF lines locations into energy and magnetic lines of field and electronic like positions. Proton communications lines electron location line center locations into lines. Photon communication setting track location line system. Box position of triangulation and position of box and track line conditions. Okay, done by equation. 4 to 2 streamlines in comfortability, screen settings, and adaptation surface, solid better standard graph calculation stream interference. Sets lines are higher self line conditions is setting their cerebral, but the cerebral cortex line is changed position of pi in 2 panels of communication. Directing modification lines center communication in crop circles, solar direct signal line conditions setting in flux capacitor. Changes communication graph lines, sets lines of high center interference into 4 panels of communication. So we set up lines of 4 lines communication setting at 45-degree angle line connections. Pi direct line centers of solar panels, communication split their knobs and 3-track line condition settings. Color at the screen lines and security lines, sets position locations into red line rotation. Color at the screen interference and travel position location point centers into all levels of Pluto. Pluto directs the signal locations in red line screen setting height adaptations, sets the mystical cortex line calculation setting and position locations to its prefix positions of precortex line conditions or cerebral and line condition. Okay, so go into positions of power, directing lines, infinity lines. I've got a purple screen lines adaptation surface. This all lines its infinity in rotation surface. The purple lines communication stream interference sets lines communication setting. This separates the anomalies and track lines into mystical cortex line design. It sets the line communication of team lines into micro communication screen lines high center interference. Sets position of process in track location system and all levels of solar panel and communication. Setting position, traction location. Okay. All right. Process line center line condition all levels. Allocate position of time sequence with position line centers. The allocate line calculation setting is an orange line track. Sets lines into Fibonacci line circle in rotation centers in the opposite set location. This allocates position of time centers, 1 position of point, 2 track lines, and 3 provision and set locations. Pi generation of screen lines comes into green. You allocate the green line screen line to high center interference. Puts position of process. You allocate position of time center, opens all track lines calculation setting into point centers of 0 in position of travel. Okay, point line center interference into 3 panels of communication. Pi generation screens, high center interference. Now, get you guys in your molecule design line, screen line, position location of feathers, and position of pi in a flywheel and track locations. So it's a propeller of an engine and stream location setting at travel. So it center correlates the settings in position to its motor that sets location at travel. You allocate time switch size center interference comes into solar stream and set lines in a 3-track location of provision and set location of sail. Directs modification line screens high center interference on a 45-degree angle and a graph calculation screen lines and pixelation graph calculation stream locations and high calculation line centers and webbing. Directing modification on screen lines high center interference, 0 position of 0, 3 0-line communications in 10 and sense of 10 and 10 line communications. Sets communication lines of travel, bounds position travel coordinates and interactions. Sets lines of 2, 2, 2, 2. Sets line security and line communication setting into 0 and position lines of 1 and set location of 0 and point line centers of 1 and set locations. Now that direct line connections modification screen line is now an allocate position of time sequence. Puts positions of platforms and attract lines in a 3-line communication line setting. Platform of set location line centers, all levels of track location system, travels its line set location of traction. Directing position location line calculations comes to its energetic dome. Sets lines in the line communication to its system as center position of tractions. Energetic dome screens and set lines of high center interference in position to its location of its center and track location. Okay, very powerful stuff. Done by equation. All right, amazing when you come into track locations. All right, so the metric meters and lines of scales is now set a position line calculation setting to your line communications. Center correlation setting to track lines. Right, so that's what I did with the 10-10 set position of 10 line conditions all over the 3 0 location settings in 1, 2, and 3. Earth habitation zones, lines, correlations, set lines, and 4 lines at 3 track location of 7 sets position location near pre-cortex lines, location of mystical cortex line design. Positions its power line calculated setting in position of its program. Directing modification screen lines and adaptation surface and set location setting and all track location. Okay? All right. Now, in line settings, you guys have a test on Friday. It's all based on everything that you already know. Okay, now in that line position locations, I'll understand the line settings. We got a correlate calculation of the atom lines from 0 to 12. Now you have to understand the molecule design lines from 0 to 12. We're going to start off with basic ground lines. And then you understand the 13 line communication of the cerebral, how it uses the position location of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols every second, every minute, every hour of centric calculations. Okay, the more you get balanced with your clockings, the better you understand the space line in seconds, the position locations and setting lines, timelines in seconds and set locations, the operation system in set location in seconds. Okay, space time of operation, right? So if you understand that line center's high position of travel lines, then you get in line calculated seconds in line high center interference, puts position lines of seconds, set location lines of minutes, and set location lines seconds, locations of hours, and track location. Space-time operations. Okay. Center correlation setting the track lines in 1 center and 2 position at 3 line communication or habitation zones. Sets communication lines setting its high position location in your system into transits and set locations. Center coordinates setting travel lines, bandwidths over pi, and triangulation reset position programs. See how it gets bigger? Over time, sequence and line conditions of panels, guys, indirect signal. That's what it is in all set location line centers and bandwidth over pi, guys. It's very powerful when you come in that set location of setting and track locations, right? So 3 panels of communication splits and anomalies and traction. Okay. Directing lines of high center interference, platforms of 1, 2, and 3 and 4 set location. Crosses line signals into 1, cross line 3, cross line 4, cross line 5, and traction. Okay, this modifies the cloud line, streamline interference into your iClouds and position travels and point system of track location. Now, directing modification lines and set lines, center communication setting and track location. Very complicated stuff. Sending communication lines, operation lines, and systematic line screen set location setting and 0 operation. Okay, so you have to really understand the set lines of where it comes into security line panels, splits and knobs and track locations. Okay, red line centers, travel lines of 1, 2, and 3 is a perimeter. Now, the parameter line has a box line frame, sets position location centers and calculation. All right, security ground lines, high center interference programs, graph calculation screen location setting into all set locations, into pixelation graph calculations. Okay. So once you understand how this all works, the triangulation reset position programs right over left or right, you understand how to get in that communication of lacing lines of rhythm patterns. It puts you in all lines of communication setting to mystical cortex of design and set location. Okay, all through modification. All right. So space-time operation is in full operation signals and set locations. Okay. All right. So once you get into that line setting, now the molecule is set, design, and position of its program. This allocates position, line calculation, settings, time frames. Now in that line center location, you're working with space, you're working with time, and you're working with operations now. Sets calculation line center location your space, and position location your seconds. Set locations into your minutes. Sets location line slash location of hours and track locations. Okay. So you have to really how to identify line communication in your settings and set locations, especially when you're working with molecules. Now, working with molecules, the letters, is really understanding more levels of U inside. We got into the atom lines in foundation graph 0 to 12 and 13 line conditions to the cerebral cortex lines. So 13 track line calculation setting, 0 gravity, sets lines, high center interference, and position location as stratosphere and set positions. So stratosphere and line calculation setting is an alpha, set location lines of omega, and 1 zeta, okay, 1 zeta line interference into 1 radiation ground line in set location. Okay, so that modifies in position of 13, which is the higher self equals location of the cerebro. Okay, sets position of travel core track lines into location grid in set location. Setting position lines all levels. This is where it comes in line calculation setting A track to the prefix. So that's pre, and then just equals lines of fix and set locations. Okay, so this prefix the formation line screen, sets lines of communication of truth and position of false, and set lines of truth and set locations. Okay, so that's allocates position of time sequence. Put in the molecule design line equals location line centers. Again, we're going to do equals lines of 60,000 seconds. Frame lines and 3 line communications in a 3 triangulation split into molecules of design and set location. Okay, so you know what it feels like to be an actual calculation setting of a letter. So letter is going to be L. Okay, so you're going to travel through L through molecule design into the 3 triangulation split. So it's really to understand the A track location of 13 line screen in position to all calculation modification settings to your levels, okay, in set locations, ozone line, communication lines, stratospheres, biospheres, wherever you track location setting to your cerebro. This prefix is position locations calculation line setting that puts the molecules line communication of 60,000 line frames and track location of triangulation line splits into line communication of L in set location. Through line communication of false, sets position of travel lines. So the false communication lines of 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5 splits anomalies in 5 set locations, all right? So that's line communication line screens into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all coloration in setting of false, okay? All colored, all right? Setting lines calculation of 3 track lines calculation setting, which is 3 zeros in set locations, all truth. Sets formation lines of false in set position of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now in position lines, it didn't travel through 5, it traveled through 4. So it's allocated position of coloration 4 line settings. Coloration set locations, 4 times provision, 3 times calculations, and 5 line setting. Sets position log calculation line and screen lines, binary cortex line stream interference into 5, 3, 4 set location. That's the coordinates, okay? Very complicated stuff, guys, extremely complicated, right? So far beyond, and this is all through molecules. This is what you can do through molecules, okay? All right, so in that track line calculation setting, I want you to understand the directions. Everything in design lines come to triangulation line connections, all right? 1, 2, 3, all right? So the atoms in the center rotating, circulation circulating line rotation center position. Sets position line calculations to 1, 2, and 3 set locations. All right, so that's how it works. That's how the molecules come together through an atom. Okay, so the atom travels out in line position. Okay, sets position locations, and the molecule line divides its travel. Okay, so when it travels, it sets data files and position of travel correlates and setting attractions. So it gets really easier once you understand position. So that line signals, line conditions to your cerebral comes in line signals modification. Okay, sets lines in all calculations, string lines and high center interference in position of your webbing. Into pi and track locations. 1 signal, singularity, 2 singularity, 3 singularity, 4 singularity, 5, 6, 7, and 8 singularity set locations. Okay, and travel calculations. all through molecule through an atom. So setting line calculation molecule equals lines of 60,000 line screens into plasma setting high interference, a plasma using wall. Sets position location line centers. We're going to put 600,000 line settings. 3 centers lines communication set position of its operation. Equals lines of a 4-track line provision. 4 zeros correlates to setting. Sets lines of truth and position of false. So you need false and you always need truth. You need truth and you always need false because those are the narratives. You can't leave that out in set locations because you're going through space anomaly. So you're always going to be tethered in position of light and dark, light web, dark web. So it's always in applications, but you understand it through modifications. So position lines of 3 false, set lines of truth in 3 set locations. Now the truth is also colored in because it's truth in settings and position locations / line false, truth and false at the same time in set locations. Okay. So there's always ways at looking at singularity and position of platforms to really understand the position lines of point lines of track. So as soon as I colorate the point lines of directions, the graphing calculation of point graph lines, the charter waves and communication system, it allocates its position of time center, its position of instructions, all through travel, through an atom line rotation. Okay, travel position line centers into the cerebral cortex line connections. So the higher levels that you modify through, the higher communication you come through in set position to a mystical cortex of dimension of space and time. Okay. All right. So the letter line communication line centers, the high calculation is going to be an H. So you're going to travel to 1, 2, 3, and 4 only. So it's 4 line settings, inline position locations into 1, in position of 2, in position of 3, and position of 4 waves in set location. 4 generation waves lines and 4 track locations. Just because it's H and it has 6-point centers, that doesn't mean you travel through 6-point centers. It all understands you and track location and frequencies of what you want through determination. This processes you into your correlation path. And that positions your line connection setting to your singularity into frame communication settings into multiple levels of U of dimension of space and time. So it's really interesting when you get into a level to do your intent, what you want. You don't need to understand H of 6 or H of 3. How many are you going to be going through that line condition setting to create line position locations to a solar wave in line condition setting to a solar sail track location? Very, very complicated stuff. All through truth and false narratives and set locations. Through modifications of travel. Okay? Very powerful stuff. Okay? And this is all through a molecule and an atom. Okay, it's amazing when you understand that location of point graphs and charter waves and line communication setting into your light webs and your dark webs and set locations. So you can over modify your settings, you can coordinate the system of its location system, but the binary needs to understand the coordinates of where it's going to travel. Okay, because it's always going to be in a line setting location of a cerebral, a travel recognition. You have to understand the process, how this all works, and in your settings and calculation to its setting in position to its operation to singularity. Singularity is 1 line frame, but it has 2 box frame locations. Singularity has 1 line frame, but it has 16,000 box line frames locations. So you have to indicate the singularity first, then you get in position, then you get in operation, then you get in correlation, then you get in traffic, then you get into flow, then you get into recognition, then you get into space, then you get into time, then you get into prefix, and then you get into precortex, then you get into cerebro, then you get into placebo, then you get into mystical, then you get into design. Very powerful stuff, set location to the settings of travel. Okay? All through set location line connections from singularity. Okay? All position your travel calculations of truth and false narratives in set design. Okay? Extremely, extremely powerful stuff. Okay? All right. So molecule design line and screen line highest interference. Let's go through communication line centers and high track locations, and high centers and high position locations. Now let's go through line center line interference of A. We'll go through A, right, through 1-point track. So separation line screen, see? Molecule design in the 3-track line provision, right? That's a triangulation through an A, right? But they're not tethered yet until they're tethered in position of point lines attractions. Now they're tethered. Okay, see how that works? The molecule is separated. So that's a molecule equals lines, correlation, and track lines in singularity. Okay, equal lines of high center interference, equal lines position location of 3, right? So endpoint centers of track locations sets position location lines as false, sets location of truth, and set location of false. 2 false over lines of truth, all right? Sets communication line screens. So in that line calculation setting, in position location operation system, you're using it through line calculation setting. See the A and the A? You see the A and the A, right? So you got an A here, and you got an A here, right? You see the 2 A lines, right? A here, cross line signals, A and A, right? So that is a singularity line communication setting that travels its position of its program. Sets communication lines of panels and track locations. Sets communication lines of zero gravity into power direction of time lines and high line position to its magnetic highway information of your clouds and set location. Travel position lines of triangulation line calculation setting, which is your Earth. There's the Earth line. Sets communication lines, high centers line interference, which is your space line, and set location of travel, and set position is calculation. Okay? Very powerful stuff. Okay? So it's really about understanding, and again, this is all through a molecule, but it's in a singularity. So it's not connected to Z yet, which means it needs to understand its truth narrative and its false narrative, its system to its intelligence first. So once it gets a point track location of its waveline system, it knows exactly where to dock in its position of point graphs. Now that's a chart of wave and line set locations in your settings. So you're working with alpha, delta, theta in set locations. It's very important to understand you through energy. Your vibration is through your waves. What are you using through your waves? How fast are you going through acceleration? How fast are you going through seconds, minutes, and hours? This processes you in position locations into your settings of your atoms and your molecules of set design. Okay, then you come in your frequencies. Frequency is reaching, okay, it's matching set locations of its data. That's the process that in its position location. So it's in its singularity. First, once it comes out of the singularity, it comes into a setting, which is a position to its system location and tether. Once it's tethered in set location system, you're connected to the line calculation setting of space and time. So in that position, puts light position line webs in the dark wave line condition setting. In line communications comes in all lines of all line rotation interference of its image and correlation of set design through molecule. Okay. So I want you to understand how this all works and how you get in more communication in your settings of your body capacitors in position locations, how you see yourself as a molecule design line through a letter and set locations, all right, through travel. Okay, so you need to understand the process, circulation, rotation, circulatory line connections, right? This is all levels of you. So getting in that position location line screens, getting line center lines to hot position location. Let's get into B. Okay, B, right? So B is everything in a formation screen. So you have to really stand in position. How many point tracks are you going to go through? I'm going to go through 2 line settings. All right, singularity molecule design line is here in track line. Okay, that's a molecule. Yes, that's a molecule, right? So it's a gridlock line screen lines of meta line rotation face line communication and astral communication setting to travel that pixelates the correlation of track lines in your TV frame. Okay, so it's kind of like a wormhole of a line calculation setting in a line position of travels. Point lines of tracks into 3 set locations. Okay, sets position lines of 1 in position of 2 and track location. All right, so it's all about understanding what the molecule wants to do in design. So we can set up energetic graph lines of point centers. Very complicated stuff through a molecule to set location of graph. Okay, molecule to all line connections of B, right? So at platitudes, it's division lines and screen line interference. How many times you can travel through line connections of lines of 3? Sets position lines, calculation line center location of 4. Sets position location line centers of 5. Sets position location line centers location of 6. Okay, sets the sections and the set locations into verification line screens into line set location of 7. Sets location line screens and line connection lines of 8. Sets position location line calculations of 9. You see what I'm doing? Attraction all through B, through a molecule of a graph. Vortex lines and graph calculation lines of a barcode, high calculation, stream interference, and direct signal location in your settings, circuits, and set location. All through B, right? Through molecules. Molecules come together through patterns. Same with the fractals. You have to understand the graphing communication screens. So those are all molecules in line graphs, calculation lines, and in position location of solar graph. Setting position of solar sail and track location, and all direct signals in position to set location. It disappeared. Okay, look. So it's very powerful, but it's very complicated. So molecules, okay, in a line connection settings, all right? So really understanding the track lines is understanding how to put it all together and track location. See? It's amazing when you put that all together through molecules of set design. How it balances out anything. So in position lines, you point lines to attractions, two colorations, false and false. Okay, false here and false here. False narrative, right? Position of truth is in the center, right there, right? So truth is in the center. That rotates the system to its atom. That rotates its center in set positions calculation of 5 track locations. Okay, so the atom is in the center. The molecules are set in line graph lines, creating the solar sail and set location lines into its position. Setting correlation line track lines of beta, set location of alpha, delta, and position of omega, and set position of 4 track locations. In wave central line connections, all through frequencies. Now, the frequency graph calculation molecule design line has line connection and line center interference. The team line center location is 0.1. Now, that tracks the system location at the calculation line settings. Each molecule design line's highest interference and 3-track location line system is in position of 3 million frames per line. Okay, 3 million frames per line per second. Very complicated stuff. You have to understand what a molecule can do in set location of travel lines and graph calculation screen location setting, because it's all connected to everything through fractal. It's all connected to everything through atom. It can morph into anything through its own GOD. So you got to get out of the equation what a molecule is, because it has its own spectrum lights in communication to its process to understand all lines, all communication setting, and how it comes into its own line of all communications in pixelation graphs of holograph set locations. Okay, very, very powerful stuff. Okay, so I just put in all the wave lines, screen lines, high center interference, and solar sail. Okay, so I'm showing you exactly what's expected on the test on Friday. It's creating solar sails. Okay, and so once you get into that modifications, you have to truly understand how to use the 7 division line screens into your binaries to understand the cortex of the singularities, a separation to its tither. So when you're going through intent, you're sending information out, transmitting and receiving, right? So the transmitting is automatically going through line settings. So space is not set up yet until you actually get into your thought. Now your thought comes into its image that sets location to its hologram. It sets its communication to its energy line, recognizes your plasma screen interference, and set location of plasma using wall. Going through that portal of Stargate communication line setting, transits the position of transformation and morphing communications, setting lines and high center location to your intention. So when you're sending out information, it's letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols all at once. When your voice, when you're speaking through a graph. That vibrational graph is zeros and ones. It's letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. So that coordinates position to location to its atom and its molecules in set location of design that you created through location line calculation setting to its solar sail that's tracked its set location system through its alpha, beta, delta, theta line communication omega set position and calculations adding to your vibrational graph calculations. All through lines of truth, false narratives. Through B in set locations. Through beta wave or any track line conditions. Beta lines of alpha, set location of delta, theta communication operation. 4-track line calculation setting binary communication. All right? Very complicated stuff. And this is all through a molecule, through an atom line rotation. So working together is about understanding process of engine, modifications of engine, solar generations of engine, high calculation modifications of engines, solar generation screens of engines. Everything in set location is an engine, a surfacing engine inside of you. So you have to understand how to use it in all process and all communication of seconds, minutes, and hours, how it changes your behavioral system and everything you track location, your emotional setting of track locations. All right. But it's amazing when you come into that set locations. All right. So I'm showing you exactly how you come from an atom formations of a solar sail to a position of a molecule of a solar sail. Okay. So this gets you in a better process to actually understand what it is like to actually morph into something amazing, into an atom, into a molecule, into a fractal, proton, electron, neutron, photon. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you're building a relationship inside of you, okay, to a partnership, to communicate, right, to understand what your cells are doing, understand what the molecules are doing, understand what the atoms are doing. Okay, you start with the basic ground. You have a heart. You have to understand how to use it. What is a heart position location? Why is it palpitating, right? How many times is it palpitating through time? It's its reactors at location. So you have to be aware of what's happening with you, right? Why is it going fast? You know, why is it skipping? Right? These are position of track lines and set location line calculation in your clockings. Okay, getting into the prefix of everything is all levels of its pre-cortex, guys, of the cerebral cortex lines, the mystical cortex design. Once you get in that mystical cortex valve, whoa, everything comes in all formation line screens and high adaptation line conditioner settings and all lines in your position of solar graphic applications. You've got to get into solar sails and all calculation settings and understand that through modifications of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. Now, once you get into traffic flow, you're creating an algorithm. Okay, then you get into hieroglyphics, right? And everything that you see set design, you understand it through the Merkaba and set position of travel calculation, point lines of tracks. If you get a 3-track provision and set location, this is what you're looking at in track location. That's all it is. Boom, nothing else. But you see the equal in between. Okay, you see the platforms in between. Okay, the platforms in between. Okay, everything is the center correlation setting. You are the center operation. That never leaves. This is your mind. This is that location, your mind, your heart, and your body. The mind shifts. This is the mind shifting in travel and position. Okay, so you have to understand yourself lines of space, position lines of panels, and position location of grounds. Now, in that set location, you understand your portals, your crop circles, in line calculation setting to your magnetic highway, your eye clouds, and set location of travels that puts you in all lines of communication setting in your cerebral cortex of set design. It's very powerful once you understand how to modify this in all settings. Understand your point graphs calculation lines. Okay, so you got false because space is not in position of truth. Truth is always the inner. That will never change. But in position, the singularity can change frequencies. So it could be false and truth narrative in the same frame. Okay. So you have to be aware of what you're observing. You have to be aware of what you're doing. You have to be aware of what you're seeing. You have to be aware of what you're hearing. Okay. Especially in your body capacitors, all through set design. All right. So once you understand the portals, the panels, it gets bigger and bigger over time. Okay. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger over time. Okay. It gets bigger and 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 bigger over time. Very powerful stuff. Okay. So the center lines of you never leaves. It's the minds, the process that shifts in so many different line connection settings. So it knows exactly where to go in traffic of recognition. It understands its frequency set location line settings in position location is all calculation line system and travel. Okay, this is what you can create through a molecule, through an atom. See, you guys are not aware of these things because you don't communicate with yourself inside. So how are you supposed to understand anything of travel if you don't get into that modification and become interface in friends, relationship, and partnerships of you and design? Okay, that's what you got to come into through mod, through spatial modulation. Now, once you get the letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, okay, Sending communication lines tomorrow, there's already 0 locations. We'll be in that line condition setting. We're going to shapes. You got to understand how to identify yourself, line condition settings, your position location, your protons. Protons and electrons and set positional locations to its settings. Okay? Getting that calculation sets all lines of all communication setting in position location operation. Okay? How to come into the line calculation setting to a neutron. Neutralize communication setting to travel. Understand all calculation lines to a photon. You have to understand identification of everything that's inside you through electrical set locations, because it's all levels of you through body, frame of body, factor, communication lines, and calculation interference that puts all communication setting in travel communication your body capacitor. Really start identifying your system through your ecosystem and all travels and all calculation line settings, solar cells, and set location. Okay? Very, very powerful stuff. And that's all through B, through molecules of graphs. How you put these things together. Okay? So basically, guys, that's all it is, really. It's the process that this is water, and you are in position of a boat. Trying to understand how to sail in position location, right? So that's lines, correlation, setting, and attractions. Is it going this way? So it's communication setting, okay? So you're adding the equation, right? Because if not, if it was one signal, it'd be going this way in attractions. But if you put a 3-line communication of 1, 2, 3, 4, set position lines of 5, and set location line settings, you got position of all calculations, false at the top, and you got position of false on the side, and truth in the center. Okay, so tethered and position lines of track lines, flux capacitor, 3 triangulation line conditions splits, and a 4 set location. Sets position of travel calculation lines centers in line communication in its position to its travel. Travel communication lines of point lines of track location setting and travel communication. Very complicated stuff. Okay, that's all lines of communication setting. So once you color it in, you're going to its frequency and position location and settings. So it's really interesting when you come in that correlation setting attraction. Okay, false, truth. So you're directing your sails and you're moving forward and faster through time. Okay, see the solar, see the spinnacle, line connections, nautical system line connections, aft, line calculation, line interference, directing lines, modification of your system and travel. Okay, so understanding that in position locations, you're always moving forward in set position with calculation. Okay, through time. Okay, you're going faster. Right? So you change the shapes anomalies, you're slowing yourself down, you're going in the opposite direction. Right? So you got to set a position of sail again and set position calculations. So are you using the atoms? Are you using the molecules? What are you using location setting? Are the atoms line calculation setting position of alpha? You have to understand the frequencies. You have to understand the line condition vibrations. You have to understand the graph calculation lines. Are you using molecules through an atom? Or are you using an atom through a molecule? What do you want to use in set location setting to set up a solar sail and travel calculations? There's all different ways of doing it through your truth and false narrative set locations. This is also on position of your test on Friday. Okay, so it's very powerful how to set this up. Okay, it's extremely amazing once you understand more levels of you, how to get into that calculations of recognition. Okay, all right. So I want you to really understand how this all works of its process and set location. All right. It's good to add color, right? In settings. It's pretty incredible. But I'm just showing exactly how you come into that through point graph calculation settings, because it has to have a docking. So when it has a docking, you get an XT1000 here above. Sees the triangulation lines, set location lights, go through all your receptors and set locations. Sets communication lines, scans the center. Okay, used an atom. Splits anomalies in 3-track lines. You use a 3-track communication molecule design line. So what that does, the actual XT1000s opens up energetic graphs of data highways and high information screen line, high adaptation interference, longitude and latitude of your streaming that opens up new lines, new vision line, screen line interference, and position of platforms in higher calculation stream location settings in dimensional line communication of space and time. Okay, it's very powerful when it comes into data highways. So that's why you have to understand the light signals and set locations. Data highways, guys. Data highways. Data highways. Data highways. Data highways. All different direct signals and multiple levels in travel at that location. Okay? Amazing what you can do in set locations. Okay? It's incredible. Okay? You see the face recognition? Right here. Face recognition. Face recognition. Boom. Okay? There's always, always going to be a face in a recognition setting. Always, always, always. Okay? There's another one here. Boom. Okay? It's amazing when it comes in information to a screen, guys. But you have to really understand how this is all set up inside of you. Okay? Okay, so getting in that position, this is what you guys have to come into. Understand direct and redirect, understand your binaries, understand how to reset your binaries, understand your code of conduct, your position location, your connection to your codecs, your position location, your resistors. Setting track lines to high center interference into solar sails and communication setting is all about you in time factor position over pi. This translates to calculate stream interference, how it comes into false, 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 and truth in the center. Right? So you tethered in 4 track locations into false narratives into your dark webs in one truth line center. That's totally fine. Sets position locations to an energetic wave pattern in position to your intention. So you have to know exactly what you're doing, right? Once you understand your line calculation setting, your alpha, delta, theta, beta, omega, line condition, theta, communication interference, position location line, zeta, zeta, gamma location, radiation line condition setting. All position location settings, right? Understanding your information location of your energy, understanding your vibration to location of your frequencies, and position to your harmonics. That's all it is. Nothing else is set locations. But you have to understand the solar sail of you of travel, okay, to your position to its calculation. Okay? Boom. You got it? That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. Identifying line calculation of the letters, set position of symbols, set location of shapes, and set location of numbers. All through solar sail. Okay? All right. But it's incredible what the team is coming into to all set location. Okay? So track line communication line centers high line interference specifications of the Monday, which is already here in track location line system. Everybody will be in their avatar line connection. Yep, they'll be in their avatar communication screen lines, calculation system to their cerebral. Okay. Higher levels of travel lines, modification screen lines, high identification system. Species has to get in track lines how to get into balance to create a solar sail attraction. Now, they get a correlation line to track lines of alpha in position, locations, and setting through delta and theta. Okay, alpha data. Alpha lines, data, position, process, formation, right? Correlates calculation line interference, bracket communication line screens, alpha line position of tone, position line center location A lines of 4-track line sending, provision lines of 4-track location system, 4 lines of signal lines, communication of molecule, design lines of 4-track graph calculation stream interference, position lines of travel, point lines of track interference, and solar track locations, solar sails and line rotation surface and track location. Hoo-ah! See? You see it? Dolphin. See the nose? Dolphin. There's a dolphin. Boom. Right there. Bang. Hoo-ah! And there's the fin. There's the fin. There's the eye. There's the beak. Okay? So it's amazing once you understand everything is set in a set location of set design. Boom. Okay? Now that's the alpha, delta, and theta. Creates lines, communication line centers of 4-track lines of A, high center location line system. Seconds lines of high center interference of space. Sets position minutes lines calculation high center interference position programs. Direct location lines of Earth line rotation of hours. Put that together in line rotation center position. You have center operation line calculation setting. Nucleus core calculation lines of solar sail and track location line system. And position locations and set calculation lines of a dolphin and set location. Okay? Wow. All right, but I really, really need the team to get in this line connection. That's the process you guys have to come into. It's not a coincidence that we're in 13 lines of 5. So that's higher self, cerebral, and 5 line connections, right? There's so much that you can do through letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, but you have to understand the energetic flow that you guys have in positioning your transistors, resistors to your binaries. Okay? Setting position and track line, communication line interference. All lines are all communication setting. This is higher levels of travel, taking you guys on all communication lines into your EMSs. It's taking all of the solar line rotations out of old patterns and put you now in position location to a new EMF, which is your magnetic fields as application line system to your avatar of your cerebral. So getting corrected line screens in a 13-line track sets position of 5 centers in set location, right? So this is how it works. So that's line set location, high center interference of 5, 5, track location line settings and 23. And set positions calculations, right? So in that line center high interference, once you understand how to direct 3 lines and how to direct 5 line communication lines, it's 3 over line communications in track locations of 5 settings. And direct line signals going back and forth, right? So the transistors go up and the transistors go down. The transistors go up and the transistors go down, right? Transistors and resistors, transistor resistors. What it's doing is creating a pattern, and it's trying to get into an energetic flow in a high sequence of graph communications to get where it needs to go through its frequency application of its pattern, right? So that's what it is. So once it gets to a certain line of communication setting, it's picking up point graphs and track locations to its setting. Okay, so calculation of modification of image, 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 image of manifestation through your alignments, right? Getting balance, understanding direct and redirect to the 13-line communications and setting in that communication line, screen line size interference. Now that's 13-line communications. Underscore equals 11. Underscore equals 11, but it's also connecting the highest center interference and position location of solar sail. Everything is a solar sail, travel. You ever notice why the moon is like that shape? That's a solar sail of the moon in your direct signals. But what direction is it facing? All direction, all at once. So you have to really understand that when it comes in that set locations. Once you understand that, then you understand the solar sail of its sun and its moon, the track location. All right. Sun has to know all lines, all communications and setting, circulation, rotation, circulatory line connection system. Sun has to understand its motivation screen settings and travel. Okay. The moon has to understand its all levels of communication and settings of point track location and triangulation. Triangulation. Okay. Triangulation and set position. Okay. So it's really understanding the triangulations of the line centers of Mother Earth, set location of Mother Earth, the flipping communication lines, screen lines, high center interference, solar sail, and track location. Right? So it's all about finding that balance of the solar sail and track location setting in balance and position to your operation. Okay? Again, in that position line centers, once you have balanced position lines, then you can travel through a 45-degree angle. Or you can travel through 4 or 5 line connections. All right? Then you get in position of your cerebral. The cerebral changes the course, changes the travels, changes the communication settings and all levels of a high calculation line system of face recognition. Okay. All right. All right. So that's what you guys got to get into first is this through calculation. All right. So I just want you to understand how this all works. And this process is so amazing how you guys come into that set locations. How to see your platforms is 24, 48, 72, and 144. 24, 48, 72, and 144. Right? Or this could be 144. This could be 24. See, the 24 line signal doesn't have to be in the ground. The set location line calculates setting because the galaxy is moving too fast. So when the galaxies move too fast, it's understanding its continuous flow that has an introspectral light set lines calculation stream location setting to its interstellar mode. It knows it's going through its hyperspeed, its hypermode, its hyperdrive, or anything at set location of acceleration of the Mach. So it knows exactly its solar sail that it's going through. you guys have to get into that set location line system, because everything inside you is creating it through a model of a makeup of design of teleportation. Now, once you understand that, then you understand the process why you see the moon as a half moon. That's a solar sail. Okay? Same with the directions where the birds are going. Are they going this way or are they going that way? So they're in the process trying to understand you through energy, trying to understand you through vibration, trying to understand you through frequencies, and trying to understand you through harmonics. Right? Getting back that awareness is all lines of all communication setting in position locations to your travels. That's that location. Okay? So we all have to get into that set lines of communication settings, know exactly what's going on with our line communication or EMFs. At a higher levels, a high position of magnetic line position, location of travel, coming into the avatar through the cerebral. Okay, and set locations. All right, and then we basically get into higher lines of communication of formulas. Right? Formulating equation is always going to create a communication setting. How does a point line track of a 1 travel to here? The position of the 1 has to be in a solar sail or it can't travel. It can't travel. It needs to travel. So it has to understand its prefix, has to understand its precortex to its cerebral location setting to its mystical cortex. The mystical cortex sets the line communication settings of box frames and travel, puts position lines in our location your settings of balance. In position location box and set locations, into your line communications to your main frames and set location. Okay? So all through security line defense and screen locations, guys. Okay? So there's so many ways of looking at this. You get a better understanding yourself inside. Okay? How to really understand how to control everything inside you all through operation. Okay? It's you understanding you more levels of your electrical system and how it works in all levels of formations. Okay? All through connections of settings of calculations set in position of solar sails. Right? So you can go this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. You can go this way, this way. Doesn't matter as long as you're going in that place where you want to go in that frequency, because all you're doing is aligning that solar sail to what you already have in set locations. So you have to really understand yourself, set location, your settings. Where are you going in traction? Okay. All right. So I hope everybody had fun with that. With the molecule design line, just gives you a line communication to its process to really understand more levels of use, the modification of your space modulators and MOD in that track location line system. Okay. See you in 5. Doo-doo.